Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zoom into Books this afternoon. We have Dr. Paula Christian-Kliger and guest interviewer Lori Blumenstein. So I'm going to give it to them now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited to be able to interview my colleague and author of Power Your Heart, Power Your Mind, Dr. Paula Christian-Kliger. And Paula, why don't you give us a little bit of your story?
Well, I am also thrilled to be here to talk about Power Your Heart, Power Your Mind, self-study, then build a bridge to someone. I'm just gonna kind of show everybody the book again with the two awards that I have actually received from Indie Book Awards. I was a finalist for poetry and for illustrations. And so a little bit, I'll come back to the books and the utility, but let me talk a little bit about the history of the development of the book. This book has been in development probably for over 20 years. I had some early life experiences before I became a psychologist, actually, that really shaped my thinking about being human. But I didn't really know it then. It was only after becoming a psychologist that I began to put some pieces together that kind of led me into this path of writing the book. So let me tell you a couple of things that were very instrumental. First of all, I grew up with some pretty incredible parents. I'm African, Caribbean American. And my father was a physician and one of the first, doctors to kind of go to the South and to move his practice into a place where he was the only doctor for miles around. And my mom was sort of his assistant. And I grew up with somebody who really believed in making a difference in the world, both parents. And, but my mother became ill, psychologically ill. And it became a long-standing kind of concern for the family to help to support her. And she died prematurely. And one of the things that I always thought about when I thought about my mom was that she always wanted to she wanted to feel free from any of the emotional difficulties she would have. She talked about that probably nearly every day. I know, number one, that influenced me a lot. And all of the strife and stress initially that the family experienced, as we definitely emerged out of it. The second big experience that comes to mind that's relevant to doing the book is that I wasn't a psychologist initially. I was a musician and a singer. And in that role, Lori, as I'm talking about this, I was able to do gigs all over the country, but there's one important experience that shaped probably everything for me. And that was when I did an audition and I became part of the USO. And I was the only woman in a troop of 5 guys who went to sing in South Vietnam during the Vietnam War. Now you might wonder, like, how did that, what influence that had on me? Well, the influence was that I learned something about what it's like to be in a life and death situation. I learned something about trauma. I listened to the stories of the soldiers. I listened to the stories of the Vietnamese people because I was in the bush right at the demilitarized zone. I was in the villages with the people. I understood something about the culture. It was a profound experience for me. When I came back, I decided to change my major from music to psychology. I didn't give up my artistic side. I made that a minor, but I decided to become, at that point, focused on psychology. So then fast forward, right? You wonder, like, how did this book come about? Well, among the kinds of clinical work that I do, which you and I do together, we do individual work, but I've done a lot of work with organizations, and especially called on to go into organizational situations where there's a crisis or there was a trauma of one kind or another. And it became very clear to me over time that somehow or another, people in these settings, particularly leaders, because we always want to work with people at the top or at the leadership levels if we're going to really have an impact. But I began to wonder a little bit about how to reach people better in a way that's more user-friendly, so to speak. And so what I did was I began to think a little bit about my own experiences. And my own experiences began to inform me and led me to begin to paint. So the book is the result of beginning to use myself to process my life and my experiences in what felt like a non-threatening way. And then it occurred to me that maybe I could use that same method with others.
So that's an interesting question and again, you talked about leaders, but how do you think people, organizations, leaders, young people, parents, just anyone can use the book as a guide in their lives?
So, as I said, I began to paint myself as a way of understanding. I'm sort of doing what I've developed now, what we call a self-study model for powering the mind, powering our hearts, opening ourselves up. And over time, the paintings began to inform me about who I was. And with that came certain principles, but I think are kind of universal principles for how we live. And I had a particular experience with an organization that kind of got me on the road to developing the book more fully, and to kind of even help me understand how it could be useful in a number of different populations. So let me just tell you how I used the book and how I began to use the paintings and how I began to use the words that are related to the paintings in an organization. So I had this very tough organizational situation come up. And the leadership sitting around the table could not seem to get started talking about the kinds of issues that they were dealing with. So I decided, you know what the heck? Why not use one of my paintings as a jumping off point? It seemed to me that I needed to find something non-defensive for this group to begin with. Why? Because no one seeks help, even in our individual cases, which you know about this clinically. No one's going to show up at our door because everything's going well. What ends up happening is people show up when there's a real problem. But even if they show up, they're ambivalent about talking about things. So what I did with this group is I came in one day, I presented them with one of my paintings, and I had two questions for them. two questions. One question was, what comes to mind? Doesn't matter what it is, there's nothing foolish or silly. And people began to just talk about whatever came to mind, and I made note of that. Then the second question was, this is where things opened up. I said to them, how does your reaction to the painting relate to your life? And wow, not only did I see people individually talk about themselves personally, but the group began to share with each other in a more compassionate and empathic way. So that over time, and I have to say with encouragement, because it was hard for me to get going on this, and you probably could speak to that better than me, I began to pull together the series of paintings that I had done with the words that might go with them. And it began to be clear as I worked in the work organizationally and clinically that this would be useful for a range of people. It would be great for, of course, leaders. We've used it with young adults in our groups. We've used the paintings, and we've used kind of these kinds of what I think are like more like projective kinds of experiences or experiential exercises. I think it'd be great for educators to use with kids this book, because one of the things I find is that today, yes, we love a book that's a narrative, but there's something about something visual for young people, and visual even for us as adults, something we can look at and even project ourselves into. And then a very unique part of the book is that you can journal your thoughts and feelings as you go along. It's a guide as well toward self-discovery.
So I wonder if you can, you've mentioned this a few times about the model and self-study and it being approachable. I wonder if you can give the audience today a little more understanding of what that means and how almost easy it is to step in from any place someone is as a person who wants to look at this book.
So the stepping in to it, I might want to kind of give you an example. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe what we could do is take a look at one of the illustrations.
Yeah, how about do a reading?
One of the poems
that'd be outstanding. Let's start there.
Okay. So I'm going to pull up okay, let's see how I do this. First of all, I'm going to share screen.
While you're doing that, and I don't know if anyone who's already has the book and may be joining us just to kind of hear from Dr. Kliger directly. This is on page 60 of the book. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is the cover of the book. And here is one of the illustrations from the book. And what I want to depict here is a concept that is shared throughout the book. And it has to do with the principle that and it's principle 3. There are 10 core self-study principles having to do with that we're human first and all kinds of aspects of who we are in the self-discovery process. This particular painting came out of a sense that in our self-study experience, we are going to learn that we're very complex. Okay? So truth is always in the eye of the beholder. And what I wanted to share here is that if the truth of who we are is in the eye of the beholder, who would be, let's just say, would be me, or someone who is reading the book or going through the book, then the goal would be to learn something about oneself. But then on the other hand, it would be important to begin to find ways to expand so that you can see more that's connected to the world around us. So here are the words, some of the words that go with that particular piece. How can I know you? Why should I try to know you? Why is there always the I versus you? It is so hard for the I, that's E-Y-E, to really see another. What lies in the heart of you? And how can you know me? How can you know what lies inside the heart of I? And again, E-Y-E. Truth can only be realized in the eye of the beholder. So here is let's go back to the painting again, right? So truth is in the eye of the beholder, but when we are trying to connect with another human being, the goal is not to just be in our own minds, in our own heads, but to reach inside ourselves to see more of the other, so that we don't feel isolated, so we don't feel there's an us versus them. So to finish the words I wrote, by the I, and I mean E-Y-E, inside of me, shared if and only if I am aware that the sharing is safe with the I inside of you. But then, where is the truth of you? It is always in the eye of the beholder.
What's so striking about your words is that the time that we're living in, and for those of us who are trying to manage the chaos and the confusion, it really, the centering is what you're speaking to in this piece. Can you speak a little bit to also the mindfulness that you are weaving into that piece that you just wrote, or read from, I should say?
So the self-study model includes practices. There are 5 core practices. And the first two really, most important practices that the book emphasizes, and I hope in a user-friendly way, is how can I be more mindful of what's going on in me mentally, emotionally, spiritually, relationally? How can I be more present and not distracted, right? Because in the moment is when we're going to be able to see much more going on in our lives, in ourselves and in others. And when we're distracted, we're not able to make good choices about how to react and so forth. So mindfulness is the first key self-study practice. And I mean a practice in the sense that it's something over time we begin to do on a daily basis.
How do you see that mindfulness and the core practice, not just for leaders, but for in our everyday lives?
It is, let's look at the coronavirus. Right now, we are living at a time of a pandemic, an amazing time that has thrown us all across the globe into a state of emotional chaos, mental chaos, because of the uncertainty that we face every day about our lives. And suddenly we're, as we watch the world struggle with all of this, we find ourselves having to shelter in place, isolate ourselves from friends, our normal work experiences, or just general life experiences. Or even if we're at home with others, we may find that we have to isolate ourselves, but at the same time, it may be difficult. And what you're hearing in the background may be a siren, because I'm in New York City sharing all of this with you. What you learn is to go with the moment, just like we just did. And in order to go with the moment, I practice mindfulness.
One of the things you just brought up is the COVID situation and the changing world that we're in and all the complexities. And you often speak about how there's isolation and anxiety in this, and the importance of the self-study practice to really ground and center yourself, even with all of the difficulties that are happening in our world. Can you speak a more again to that complexities?
One of the things that I think the book does do with regard to complexities of our lives is that imagine, which we're imagining right now. We've got COVID, the pandemic. We've got even social unrest. We've got all the disruption in our lives. As you point out, you bring up all of these complexities. One of the things the self-study model does, in particular, kind of working on mindfulness and becoming more connected with the observing eye, is it gives us the permission to stop, pause, and step back and sit inside what we're experiencing. Not run from the complexity, right? To sit with the complexity. And I have a number of illustrations and poem words that work on exactly that, how to stay in whatever we're feeling. It's easy to stay with things that bring us joy. It's really difficult to hang in there with the things that bring us anxiety or even pain and suffering. And to find ways out of it by allowing ourselves to have the experience and then emerge with some hope through something, for example, a past experience that has been very rewarding for us. And that's what this model and the book, step by step, helps people to do.
Before you share another piece, and I know you've got one kind of tuned up there, in the title, it talks about self-study, then build a bridge to someone. What does that mean?
So what I'd like to do is to share a screen for that particular painting.
Okay.
So just be patient with me here. I'm going to go with this again. And I'm going to take us to a new one. That is not one. Okay, so this painting is a reflection of the second part of the title, of the subtitle. So the book is about self-study, yes. But then as we engage in self-study, then it's important for us to build bridges, to reach out to others. And the painting is a reflection of a bridge and how we find our way. We want to find our way to valuing others as we learn more about ourselves. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think, again, you're bringing up something that's so timely for what everyone is dealing with in this world, and why the journey that you've put in place here through this book can take people through to bridge to their own stories so that they can bridge to other people's stories. And I think that's something that's very central in everything that you have put into this piece. I wonder, there's a particular one, another piece called Awakenings. And that's one of the things that you really are helping people focus on through this book. I wonder if you could read us a piece and show us something on the Awakenings.
So I think what I'll do is I'll read the words first.
Sure.
And then I will show you the piece that goes with it, and kind of help you see the connection. So this is called Awakenings. Awakenings project us out there into life. A life filled with twists and turns, hopes, dreams, despair, and then hope again. Learning. Life is all there is. Awakenings are the puzzlement and the off-putting, the wonder and the beauty, all rolled into one, twirling sparkles of light, living. Awakenings introduce us to the likes of our own permanent rumor, change. So now let me show you the, let's go to, I want to go there, I want to go first to share screen. I want to share screen again. So we're gonna, if I can go, I can't. Give me just a moment.
Technologically, you know, art, technology, poetry.
Yeah.
Those are all so wonderfully Zen, and then
Yes.
we have to actually find a way to share these things with others.
So here is Awakening. So Awakenings, this painting is a reflection of what I believe is the process of how we awaken. Remember, in Awakenings, I talk about that we go through ups and downs. We learn, and we are puzzled, and then we somehow or another we're living. We realize we're living, and then we realize we're living with change all the time. But the important thing that this Awakenings painting points out through the book is that we are always evolving. So if you notice, the spiral always get wider and wider and wider. Awakenings is that even though we go through all kinds of ups and downs, ins and outs, we are always growing. We are always awakening more. So
that's your self-study journey, right? It's about awakenings.
That is the self-study journey. And so let me read the last portion of Awakenings, so you can hear how it ends. And it says, Awakenings, we wake up to life, one infinite moment at a time, to who we are forever.
So poignant, so meaningful. And I think that pulls us into the fact that this is an individual journey, but yet it can be shared. And you showed a journal in the beginning. Why is that so important? As we've looked at a couple of these pieces, why is that so important to using this book and art?
So, yes, great question. So if someone goes to the website, and then of course they'll go to Amazon to order the book.
The website, can you talk about?
Pardon me?
The Psych Assets website?
The Psych Assets website. www.psychassets.com, they will see two options. And one option is you see the book that we're showing, right? But then there's also an additional journal that's called Reflections, Power Your Heart in Practice. And the reason why I designed the journal to go along with the book is because when I first developed the book, and by the way, the journal has a lot of space for writing thoughts, feelings, and reactions. But it also has the paintings, so people can explore with questions. So there's a little story with all of this and why I developed the reflections piece. When I put the draft of the book together initially, I decided it's so different. It's just unique. It is not the typical book, right? It's poems, it's poetic essay, it's graphic, it's illustrations. So I sent it out to 23 or 24 of my closest colleagues and friends. And I invited them to give me feedback before we went down the road of putting it together in its final form. I got these amazing bits of feedback, and it led me to put the book together in a very systematic way. That's how I learned that I needed to bring people step by step by step. And then I got this wonderful comment from a couple of people who said, you know, you gave me a page in the book to journal, but it wasn't enough. And what they did was they went to their computer and they typed like a page or more, or they'd go back to the book like a couple of days later or a week later, and they wanted to say something completely different or more. The journal is meant to allow someone to go and add more, write more, and at the same time, it really encourages ongoing and evolving thoughts and reactions that have to do with self-study and building bridges to others.
So that is a wonderful segue to one of the important pieces, or the call to action that is really in this book and is in our practice that you established some 30 years ago, and the mission-driven nature of things. Can you talk about we are called, and what does that mean?
Well, again, I am hopeful, and I hope people go to my website and look at the book and get the book. Given my own background in history of having some early challenges in life, but also observing so many people faced with pain and suffering, I also recognized, and it's in this book, that the painful things that we go through, the ordeals that we go through, they teach us perhaps more than some of the joyful times that we have. And when we allow ourselves to learn and to stay and to come to understand the meaning of those experiences in the context of our own lives, we want to give it away. We have a compulsion to share what we have learned. If we felt trauma or pain and suffering, physical, mental, whatever, once we've begun to figure some things out, we want to share it. And that sharing, I believe, I call it is a calling. It is a call to action. And this book on self-study and build a bridge to someone is about a call to action. It's about being able to get to know oneself and enjoy that process so much that you begin to value human life overall even more. And then the next thing that happens is, gosh, I really want to do this in some way, in my own way. It could be a teacher. You could be building bridges every day. You could be a construction worker. You could be, a waitress at a restaurant. It doesn't matter. You could be a middle school kid. But you begin to realize, I want to make the world better because I have to give away what I am learning about life. So that really is at the heart of power your heart, you power your mind. Self-study, then build a bridge to someone. I have a video that shows some of the things that we have been able to do. If you'd like to see it.
I think that's a perfect time.
I don't know if that's something we want to do now.
We certainly can. It's perfect time.
Okay, so once again, patience with me, everyone who's looking in. I'm going to share now a video. And this video is a reflection of some of the things that we have been able to do. I have, and with my colleague sitting here, Lori Blumenstein-Bott, and with others, my daughter, who's also a counseling psychologist. These are some of the things we've been able to do as a result of writing the book and working with the book in the work. Oh, sorry, guys.
Some video, yeah. Okay. We have a little glitch there.
When life hits a roadblock, many turn to therapy for help, but there's a different approach to an age-old problem that has many turning their heads. A local psychotherapist who believes many solutions lie in art. And there's a colorful display to celebrate that this weekend. Take a look.
so there we are.
So that was really a great sort of summary of so many things that this has bridged you to and our practice at Psych Assets. I wonder if you could also talk about the podcast and blog that's related to I Am Human First, which you showed quite brilliantly there.
So two of the other big things that we have been able to do, I began to enjoy the radio talk show experience, and which really came through a lot of your support, Lori Blumenstein-Bott, and finding the right people to work with. But it occurred to me that, you know what, we have ongoing ideas about how to support people, both, you know, clinically and people who are in organizations, leaders, and so forth. And so I thought of, we need a podcast. And so we talked about it, right? And I wasn't satisfied with just doing somebody else's podcast. I wanted us to have our own. And so we decided that we would begin an ongoing podcast that is called, it's titled, We Are Human First. I'm part of that podcast. You are Lori Blumenstein-Bott, and it addresses the self-study model that is at the heart of the book. And so it really is kind of an outgrowth of the book itself. And then related to that are a set of blogs that we also have started writing, and which are also all the podcast and the blogs and so forth are on the website. And actually the podcast is a gold medal winner of the Hermes International Creative Award for 2020 as well. And we're very, very proud of that too. So that has been a very significant part of adding to how do we share this journey of self-study and building bridges to others, and then of course the call to action to give that away.
So we've been talking with my colleague, Dr. Paula Christian-Kliger, about her wonderful book, Power Your Heart, You Power Your Mind, Self-Study, Then Build a Bridge to Someone. And she's been sharing so many things and pictures and the illustrations and the words and the story behind the story. As we're bringing this to a bit of a close, I wonder if there's something you want to leave the people that have tuned into Facebook Live right now, and something to share as they ponder looking deeper into the book.
I think that the key to powering the heart is self-study. I cannot emphasize enough how powerful it is to know ourselves and all of our little crannies, nooks and crannies, and to own who we are. Because when we're able to do that, we're able to find our true purpose, our true mission on this planet. And we're then a model for others. I mean, we don't even have to say anything, actually. Just what we end up doing becomes a model of hope for others. And I hope that's what this book brings to people. And I hope that in the book, there are all kinds of steps you can take on your own and next steps. So those are some of the messages I want people to take away from this interview, and hopefully what they will begin to see as they explore the book.
And as we bring this to a close, is there anything that's in the works that you would like our audience to know about that's maybe forthcoming?
Well, I'm working on a second book in the series, the Power Your Heart, Power Your Mind series. And should I tell people what the working title is?
I think it's a little, peek in, sure.
The second book is going to be called Sharing Power. Because it will focus on self-study still, the principles and the practice, but it will take us deeper into how important it is to acknowledge others and to give others the space to shine, and that we've got plenty, every single human being, all life, okay, has a purpose. And so this book is going to have illustrations and poetic essays and so forth around how to share power and not get locked up and stuck in envy or hurting others or hierarchies. Somebody has to be on top and someone has to be on the bottom. So I'm really, and we're moving along, and we probably are going to have some neat stuff by the end of the year, and then certainly a publication by the spring next year.
So if people want to reach out to you personally, they can do that through the Psych Assets website.
Yes. And that is, once again, it is www.psychassets.com. And we're on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I am on LinkedIn.
The biggies.
And Instagram.
That's right. So I would just like to thank you for letting me be a part of this. This is a very exciting project, and I have been looking forward to this opportunity, and I know you want to close with maybe some thank yous for the audience today.
Absolutely. And I really want to thank you, Lori, for being such a wonderful partner in all the work, and for being the person who encouraged me to come up, put this together. And so I appreciate that so much. But I really want to thank Kathy Teets for all of her support in putting on this interview. I never would have thought of doing it at, Headline Books, Zoom into Books, her creation. And of course, I want to thank Indie Book Awards for them seeing in my work, in this first book, that I deserve these 2 awards, 2 categories. So thank you. I mean, my family is always a part of being thanked for everything that I do, because they've been an inspiration to me as well.
So that brings us to a close today. We hope that you'll take a look at Power Your Heart, You Power Your Mind, self-study, then build a bridge to someone. I can tell you that it's something that I use in so many aspects of my life. I hope you'll find it too.